The sky above the jagged cliffs was dark with smoke and ash. Fires burned far below, and the wind carried the smell of scorched metal and earth. Among the blackened rocks, a small dragon hatchling huddled alone. Its scales were shiny and pale, but its body shook with quiet sobs. Tears glimmered in its big golden eyes, reflecting the dying light of the burning horizon. The little dragon had lost its twin. Just hours ago, the two hatchlings had tumbled from their hidden nest, playing among the rocks. A shadow had fallen over them, and before the little dragon could even scream, its brother had been taken. A huge alien predator, with sharp claws and eyes that glowed like hot coals, had appeared from the dark. The twin had fought, biting and clawing, but it had been too small, too weak. Now, only silence remained where the two had been. The surviving hatchling curled into itself, wings trembling. Every sound of the wind, every distant cry of a creature, made it flinch. Its heart ached with a loneliness so deep it almost felt like a stone pressing inside its chest. It missed the warmth of its brother, the playful nudges, the way they had tumbled and tumbled without fear. Now the world felt empty, cold, and frightening. The cliffs were dangerous. Sharp rocks jutted out like broken teeth, and the wind could sweep even a grown dragon away. But the little one didn't move. It could not move. Its small legs felt like lead, and it could not lift its head to look for help. All it could do was weep quietly, wishing that someone, anyone, would come. Not far away, humans worked in the mining outpost. They were busy, too busy to notice the small cries carried on the wind. Machines roared, and the sound of drills and metal scraping filled the valley. The people didn't know that the little dragon was there, alone and trembling. They would have thought it was dangerous, a threat to their work, and they would have turned away. But one small human, a boy no older than 12, was different. He had brown hair that stuck out in all directions, smudged with dirt from helping his father clean the mining equipment. He ran along the cliffside, chasing a loose tool that had slipped from the work platform. His boots slipped on loose rocks, and he nearly fell more than once, but he kept going, determined not to lose the wrench. Then he heard it. A small, sorrowful cry, soft but full of pain. He froze, listening. It was unlike anything he had heard before. Not the cry of a human, not the sound of the machines, not the whine of the wind, it was something different. Something alive and sad. The boy followed the sound, carefully stepping over rocks and keeping low. He could see movement in the shadows, tiny but certain. When he reached the edge of a cliff, he saw the little dragon. It was smaller than he imagined, fragile and trembling. Its wings were folded tightly against its body, and it stared at the ground with a hollow, empty look. For a moment, the boy just watched. He felt a strange twist in his chest, a mix of fear and pity. He had never seen a dragon so close, and yet he did not feel danger. He felt a quiet sadness that mirrored the little dragon's. Its cries were soft, broken, and human-like in their sorrow. Slowly, he stepped forward. The dragon flinched, lifting its head just slightly. Its golden eyes met his, wide and full of fear. The boy dropped to one knee and whispered, "It's okay. You're not alone." The words were small, but they seemed to reach the little dragon. Its trembling eased just a fraction, and it tilted its head, curious but still wary. The boy's heart ached. He could see the loss in the dragon's eyes, the grief that no human or dragon had ever deserved to feel. He stayed there for a long while, just watching. The dragon's sobs grew quieter. The fires below cast an orange glow over the rocks, and the boy knew it was getting late. Others would leave soon. He did not want the little creature to be alone in the dark. The wind picked up, and the boy hugged his arms around himself. He spoke again softly, almost a promise, "Don't be afraid. I'll be here. I'll help you." The dragon tilted its head further, a tiny spark of hope in its eyes. It did not move closer yet, but the trust had begun, fragile as the first leaf of spring. The boy smiled faintly, knowing it would take time, but certain that he could not leave this little creature alone. Above them, the smoke swirled and the sun dipped lower. In the midst of a dangerous, broken world, two lonely beings found each other. One was a small human boy, dirty and ordinary in every way. The other was a tiny dragon, trembling and broken-hearted. But in that moment, neither of them were alone. The boy held out his hand, and the dragon's eyes lingered on it. Perhaps tomorrow, or the next day, it might step forward. Perhaps someday, they could both face the dangers of the world together. For now, there was only the quiet, shared sadness, and the first fragile spark of hope. The boy stayed by the cliff all night, listening to the dragon's soft sobs. The stars blinked above, cold and distant, but the boy felt a warmth in his chest, a quiet determination he could not ignore. He knew he could not leave the small creature alone. No one else seemed to care, and the outpost humans would see the dragon as a threat. But he could not. Not after seeing those golden eyes full of sorrow. At first light, the boy crept closer. The dragon huddled in the same spot, its wings folded tight, its tail curled around its tiny body. It looked smaller in the cold morning light, and the boy felt a pang of guilt. He had slept a little on the rocks, but the dragon had endured the night alone. The wind still bit at their faces, and the smoke from the distant fires painted everything orange and gray. The boy knelt slowly, keeping his hands open and low. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you." The dragon flinched at first, but something in the boy's voice made it pause. Its wings twitched, and it lifted its head slightly, golden eyes cautious but curious. The boy smiled faintly. Small progress, but progress all the same. He rummaged in his small satchel and pulled out a piece of dried meat. "Here," he said softly, extending it carefully. "You must be hungry." The dragon sniffed the air, lowering its head closer. Its movements were slow, uncertain, but it reached out and took the meat with its small, trembling jaws. The boy's heart leapt. This was trust, the first small step. The wind carried the distant roar of machinery from the outpost. Other humans were already at work, oblivious to the fragile scene on the cliffs. The boy glanced toward them, worry crossing his face. If they noticed the dragon, they would try to drive it away, or worse. But he could not leave it here, not alone. He whispered, almost to himself, "I'll help you. I'll be your brother if you want me to." The dragon's golden eyes widened. It had not understood words before, but the tone, the quiet, steady promise, seemed to reach it. A tiny shiver ran through its body, but it did not run. The boy smiled softly, letting it see his face was calm, kind. For hours, he stayed with the little dragon, feeding it scraps and talking quietly. They did not speak in words, but their connection grew. The dragon's sobs became quieter, less frequent, and sometimes it nudged the boy gently with its snout. It was not much, but it was enough to show that the trust was growing. As the sun climbed higher, the boy realized he had to act. The cliff was dangerous, and staying here alone was not safe for either of them. He needed a plan. He knew he could not carry the dragon down the rocks, it was too small and fragile, and the cliffs were sharp and jagged. But he could guide it, slowly, carefully, to a safer place. He stood and stretched, brushing the dirt from his clothes. The dragon watched him, golden eyes wide, head tilted. "Come on," he said softly. "We'll find a safe place." At first, the dragon did not move. Then, with a small step, it followed. One careful foot in front of the other. The boy kept his pace slow, matching the dragon's tiny strides. Every time it faltered, he stopped and spoke gently, "It's okay. Take your time." They moved slowly through the rocky terrain, avoiding loose stones and sudden drops. The dragon seemed to understand the boy's care, following without fear. Occasionally, it would glance at him with a cautious, almost questioning look, as if testing his promise. Each glance, the boy returned with a soft smile, reinforcing that promise, "I will protect you." Hours passed, and finally, they reached a small clearing away from the cliff edges. The boy collapsed to the ground, exhausted, but the dragon stayed close. It sniffed the area, then curled beside him, still trembling but calmer. The boy reached out and touched its small, warm scales. "There," he whispered. "Safe for now. You're safe." The dragon nuzzled his hand once, then rested its head on the ground. Its eyes, still golden and sad, held a tiny spark of something new, hope. For the first time since losing its twin, it felt the presence of someone who cared, someone willing to stay despite the danger, despite the fear. The boy lay back and watched the clouds drift across the sky. He felt the weight of what he had promised, "I'll be your brother." It was more than words. It was a choice. A choice to stand by a fragile, weeping creature when everyone else would turn away. Above, the distant roar of alien predators reminded him that danger was never far. But for now, the dragon was alive, and he had kept his promise. And in the quiet clearing, with smoke and ash in the distance, the boy and the little dragon began the first chapter of a bond that would change both of their lives forever. For the first time, the dragon did not cry. It simply watched him, golden eyes full of a cautious curiosity, and the boy knew they had taken the first step towards something extraordinary. The boy stayed in the clearing with the little dragon for several days. Each morning, he brought scraps of food from the outpost, dried meat, water, and small fruits he had found. The dragon was still wary at first, its golden eyes watching every move he made. But it no longer trembled as violently, and its sobs became rare. Slowly, the little dragon began to trust him. The boy gave it a name. He called it Ember, because its scales glowed softly like the dying embers of a fire. Ember seemed to recognize the sound of its new name. When the boy spoke it softly, the dragon would lift its head and blink, a small spark of curiosity lighting its eyes. At first, their interactions were small and careful. The boy would sit a few steps away, letting Ember approach on its own. He would offer food, his hand steady, and wait silently as Ember nibbled. Sometimes Ember would sniff his clothes, then hiss softly and back away. Other times, it would inch closer, nudging his hand with its tiny snout. The boy did not rush. He knew trust could not be forced. "I'll wait," he whispered one morning, brushing a hand through Ember's soft scales. "Whenever you're ready, I'll be here." Days passed, and the bond grew stronger. Ember began to follow the boy in the clearing, stepping more confidently on its small legs. Sometimes, it would flap its wings, trying short, clumsy jumps into the air. The boy would cheer quietly, clapping his hands. "Good job, Ember. You're learning." The dragon's trust grew further when the boy protected it from small dangers. One morning, a snake slithered out from the rocks, hissing angrily. Ember froze, eyes wide with fear. The boy stepped between them, using a stick to scare the snake away. Ember watched him, tilting its head, and seemed to understand. The boy had kept his promise, he would protect it. The boy also began to teach Ember small things. He would point to objects, showing how to climb over rocks or hide in the shadows if predators came. Ember was a quick learner, eager to survive. The boy felt proud, but he also felt awe. A tiny dragon, once helpless and weeping, was growing stronger because of him. At night, they would sit together in the clearing. The boy would lie on the grass, watching the stars, and Ember would curl beside him, its body warm and comforting. Sometimes Ember would press its head against the boy's shoulder, a quiet gesture of trust and companionship. The boy smiled softly and whispered, "I'll always be here. You're not alone anymore." The humans at the outpost still did not notice them. Most were busy with machines, drills, and mining work. The boy kept Ember hidden, moving only when no one was watching. It was exhausting, but he did not care. The bond they were building was worth any risk. One day, while exploring a small canyon near the clearing, Ember stumbled and fell into a shallow pool of water. The boy ran to it, shouting, "Ember! Are you okay?" The dragon flailed, trying to climb out, water soaking its tiny scales. Without hesitation, the boy waded in and gently lifted Ember onto his shoulders. The dragon shivered, but it did not cry. The boy dried it with his jacket and whispered, "It's okay. I've got you." After that day, Ember began to follow the boy more closely. It trusted him enough to step forward even when he led it near the edges of the cliffs. The boy's heart swelled with pride. He had promised to be Ember's brother, and he was keeping that promise every day. The boy also realized that Ember was learning from him, not just surviving. The dragon began mimicking small actions, tilting its head when curious, watching carefully when the boy pointed at things, even flapping its wings when excited. The boy laughed softly. "You're clever, Ember. Smarter than I thought." The boy's care was not just about food and safety. He shared warmth, comfort, and companionship. Every day, he whispered words of hope, telling Ember that no matter what happened, he would be there. And every day, Ember responded with small gestures, a nuzzle, a step forward, a flick of its tail. One morning, while the boy sat on a flat rock watching Ember flap its wings, a strange noise echoed across the cliffs. Ember froze, ears twitching. The boy held out a hand, whispering, "It's okay. I'm here." Ember stepped closer to him, trusting his promise. That small moment was a turning point. Ember realized the boy was not just a protector but a friend. Someone who would stay, who would fight for it, who would never abandon it. The boy realized something too, that even though Ember was small, fragile, and alone at first, it had courage inside it, just like humans did. Together, they grew stronger. Ember's wings became a little stronger, its legs steadier, and its trust in the boy unshakable. The boy's heart felt full, knowing that their bond was real. They had faced loss, fear, and loneliness, and now they faced each day together, a team against a world that was often cruel and dangerous. And though dangers still lurked in the shadows, the alien predators, the sharp cliffs, the distant fires, the boy and Ember had begun something extraordinary. A friendship, a bond, a promise, that neither of them would ever be alone again. Days passed peacefully, but the boy knew the calm could not last. The cliffs and forests around the outpost were not empty. Alien predators roamed, creatures far larger and sharper than Ember. He had heard their distant roars at night, and he knew they were always hunting, always hungry. He watched Ember flap its wings and play, but he felt a cold knot in his stomach. Danger was coming, and he had to be ready. One morning, as the boy and Ember explored a narrow canyon, a deep rumble echoed through the rocks. Ember froze, ears twitching, eyes wide with fear. The boy's heart pounded. "Stay close," he whispered. Ember leaned against him, trembling, and he wrapped an arm around its small body. From above, a shadow moved fast, darker than the rocks, larger than anything they had seen before. A predator, a massive alien with jagged claws and glowing red eyes, descended from the cliff edge. Its wings spread wide, black as night, casting a shadow over the canyon floor. Ember hissed and flapped, but fear held it still. The predator snarled, baring rows of sharp teeth. The boy knew running would not work. The cliff walls were steep, and the predator could fly. He had to act. He scanned the ground quickly. Broken rocks, jagged stones, and a few loose logs were scattered across the canyon. He grabbed a long stick, gripping it like a spear, and stepped in front of Ember. "I've got you," he said firmly. "Stay behind me." The predator moved closer, claws scraping against the rocks. Ember trembled, but it did not flee. The boy held the stick steady, his hands shaking but his voice calm. "I won't let it hurt you," he said again. The predator lunged. The boy thrust the stick forward, hitting it just under one claw. The alien screeched, startled. It had never expected resistance from a small human. The boy dodged as the predator swung, jumping aside and rolling over a rock. Ember let out a shrill cry, flapping its wings, and suddenly, the dragon moved. With a burst of courage, Ember leapt at the predator, teeth bared, claws slashing. It was small, but the predator did not expect it. Ember bit at one of its legs, then darted away. The alien hissed and turned its attention to the dragon, giving the boy a chance to act. The boy ran toward a pile of loose rocks, kicking them toward the predator. Stones tumbled down the slope, striking its claws and forcing it to step back. Ember joined in, swooping low, its small wings flapping furiously. Together, they distracted the predator, using cleverness instead of strength. The predator snarled and lunged again, but the boy had noticed a narrow crevice in the cliff wall. He grabbed Ember, holding it close. "Hold on tight," he said. They sprinted toward the crevice. Ember's small claws dug into his jacket, but it trusted him, letting him guide it. The predator followed, but the boy had a plan. He kicked a rock loose at just the right moment. It tumbled down the cliff edge, hitting the predator's leg. The alien stumbled and shrieked, giving the boy and Ember the chance to slip into the narrow crevice. They pressed against the walls, hidden from sight, their hearts pounding. From inside the crevice, the boy looked out. The predator circled below, frustrated and angry. Ember pressed against him, trembling but alive. The boy whispered softly, "It's okay. You're safe now. We did it." Ember's wings twitched, and it gave a small hiss that almost sounded like a sigh of relief. For a long while, they stayed hidden, listening to the predator move away, its roars fading into the distance. The boy's heart still raced, but he felt pride too. Ember had fought bravely, and they had survived together. The bond between them had grown stronger, forged in fear and courage. When the predator finally left, the boy led Ember out of the crevice. The dragon flapped its wings experimentally, testing the air. The boy smiled. "You're brave," he said. "Much braver than I ever imagined." Ember hissed softly, then nudged him gently, as if agreeing. The boy knew this was only the beginning. More dangers would come. Larger predators, sharper claws, storms, and humans who might not understand Ember. But he also knew that together, they could face anything. Ember had learned to trust him, and he had proven that courage was not about size or strength, it was about heart, quick thinking, and standing up for someone who could not protect themselves alone. That night, they returned to their clearing. The firelight of distant cliffs cast long shadows, but the boy and Ember sat together, safe for the moment. The little dragon pressed its head against the boy's shoulder, warm and alive. The boy whispered, "We'll survive. Together." Ember blinked, golden eyes reflecting the firelight. It was no longer just a weeping, frightened hatchling. It was a small dragon with courage, trust, and a bond stronger than fear. And the boy, ordinary in every way but brave in heart, had become the brother it had lost. Above them, the stars shone quietly, watching over the two. In a dangerous world, against impossible odds, the boy and Ember had proven something extraordinary, that even the smallest humans could face the largest threats, and even the smallest dragons could rise with courage when given trust. Together, they were ready for whatever came next. The next morning, the boy woke to find Ember perched on a rock, wings stretching in the pale sunlight. The little dragon looked stronger than ever, its golden eyes alert and bright. The boy smiled, brushing dirt from his hair. They had survived the predator's attack, but he knew the dangers were not over. Out here, in the cliffs and forests, nothing was safe. They had trained quietly for days, moving through the clearing and the canyon, practicing escape routes, hiding, and learning to trust each other completely. Ember had grown bolder. Its wings flapped stronger, and its legs moved with confidence. The boy had taught it to respond to his calls, and Ember had learned quickly. But today felt different. He could sense a presence, something larger, closer, more dangerous than before. A low rumble echoed across the cliffs. The boy froze, heart hammering. Ember's ears twitched, wings lifting slightly in alarm. From the shadows of the canyon, two massive alien predators emerged. Their claws scraped against the rocks, and their glowing eyes fixed on Ember. They had come for the little dragon. The boy's breath caught. He looked at Ember, then at the creatures, and knew there was no way to outrun them. There was no hiding. If they attacked, Ember could be torn apart. But he would not let it happen. Not after all they had been through. He grabbed a long, sturdy branch and stepped in front of Ember. "Stay behind me," he shouted. Ember pressed against him, trusting him completely. The boy felt fear claw at his chest, but he pushed it down. Courage was not the absence of fear, it was standing up even when terrified. The predators lunged. The boy swung his branch with all his strength, striking one across the leg. It hissed in pain, stumbling slightly. Ember hissed back, flapping its wings and leaping at the second predator. It was small compared to them, but it had courage, and it had the boy. Together, they fought with strategy and speed. The boy kicked rocks toward the first predator, tripping it, while Ember leapt and bit at its claws. The predators snarled, confused by this unlikely team. They had expected an easy meal, not a united pair of humans and dragon. The boy felt a surge of determination. He had promised to be Ember's brother, and he would fight with every ounce of strength to keep that promise. He shouted, "Go, Ember! I've got you!" Ember flapped higher, striking the predators with its small but sharp claws. One predator lunged at the boy, but he dodged, spinning and using his branch to push it back. Ember joined in, diving at the creature's eyes. The predators roared in anger, retreating momentarily. The boy grabbed Ember and ran toward the edge of a cliff. The predators followed, but the boy had a plan. He reached a narrow overhang and jumped, holding Ember tightly. The overhang was just wide enough for both of them to land safely on a lower ledge. The predators attempted to follow, but the space was too narrow. Ember hissed triumphantly, nudging the boy gently. They were safe, for now. The boy sat on the ledge, breathing heavily, and looked at Ember. The little dragon's chest heaved, golden eyes bright and alive. "We did it," he whispered. "We survived together." Ember pressed its head against his shoulder, wings flapping slowly in relief. The boy realized something then. Ember was no longer just a frightened, weeping hatchling. It was strong, brave, and full of trust. And he was no longer just a human boy trying to survive in a dangerous world. He was Ember's brother, its protector, its family. Their bond was real. From that moment on, they moved as a team. Ember learned to anticipate the boy's actions, and the boy learned to read Ember's movements. Together, they could face predators, navigate the cliffs, and explore the dangerous forests without fear. They had become more than a boy and a dragon, they were a single force, courageous and unstoppable. The distant fires burned on the horizon, casting orange light across the cliffs. The boy held Ember close, whispering softly, "You're not alone anymore. I'll always be here." Ember's golden eyes blinked slowly, almost knowingly. It pressed against him, a quiet promise of trust and loyalty. Above them, the sky stretched wide and bright. Stars began to appear, watching over the boy and the dragon. In that quiet moment, the cliffs, the forests, and the dangers of the world seemed less frightening. Together, they had faced fear, survived impossible odds, and built a bond stronger than anything else in the galaxy. The boy smiled, brushing Ember's scales gently. He knew challenges would come again, bigger predators, harsher storms, and humans who might not understand, but he no longer felt alone. Ember was by his side, and together, nothing could break their courage. The little dragon flapped its wings experimentally, testing the air, then nuzzled the boy once more. In return, he wrapped an arm around it, whispering, "We're family now. Always." Ember's eyes gleamed with life, no longer filled with fear, only trust and hope. And for the first time since losing its twin, Ember felt complete. Not alone. Not afraid. Safe. Loved. And the boy, ordinary and small in the eyes of the galaxy, had become extraordinary in his courage, his heart, and the love he showed a tiny, weeping dragon. They sat together on the cliff as the sun set, the world wide and dangerous around them. But the boy and Ember had learned the greatest lesson of all: courage was stronger than fear, hope brighter than despair, and the bond between humans and dragons could face any challenge. From that day forward, the boy and the dragon were inseparable. They would face dangers, explore the unknown, and survive together. And no matter what came, one truth remained clear: the human and the dragon had become brothers, and nothing in the galaxy could ever change that.